I overheard my husband's best friend making disturbing comments about my 16-year-old daughter on her birthday, and I confronted him. So I never expected I would be a Rin, but I need some external help with this. Sorry if the formatting is weird or the wording is jumbled up. I'm writing quickly and on my phone. Me, 42 female, and my husband, 45 male, never have any big problems. We have 5 children, 17 male, 16 female, 14 male, 10 male, and 6 male. And any fights we do have are over them, which is what this was. We have a pool, and we had a large number of people here this weekend to celebrate my daughter's 16th birthday. Of course, most of the guests were teenage girls and boys, but family friends of mine and my husband's came too. One of these friends was my husband's best friend, also 45, and his girlfriend, 32. We will call him H. I've never been too extremely fond of him or the age gap between him and his girlfriend, but alas, our children do consider him and call him their uncle. I'm close enough to his girlfriend to consider her a close friend, though. Since all my daughter's friends were all having big Sweet 16 parties, she wanted one too. So, the pool was all decorated, and so were the inside and outside. And per her request, she was the only one at the party in a red bathing suit so she would stand out. The party was going great until I was in the laundry room grabbing stuff when I overheard H talking in the room, most likely on his phone. He was saying how she was hotter than the girls he'd known as teens, and he kind of wished she was turning 18 and not 16. Any boy who eyed her would be doing service to God, and she looked too good in a red bathing suit. I stopped. I wasn't immediately jumping to action, I was confused. This is a man my children grew up with who babysat them, stayed many nights over at our house, and talked about my daughter in a way no one should talk about a child. I marched outside and dragged my husband into the house to the room H was in. I'll admit I yelled and told H he wasn't allowed in my house or around any of our family again, especially our daughter, and to leave immediately. Before telling my husband anything, he got red in the face and cussed at me and my husband for eavesdropping. I screamed at H to tell my husband what he was saying in my house about my daughter. H got even more mad before storming out and leaving in his girlfriend's car without his girlfriend. My husband was getting irritated and demanded to know what happened, so I took a second to calm down before telling him. He told me we would deal with it later and just let our daughter have the rest of the party. I agreed, and we rejoined that party, even though we got a few looks. H's girlfriend came up to me towards the end asking why H was spamming her phone, telling her that I was a BTCH and RT hole, basically all the derogatory terms you can think of, even going so far as to say I was a DKE, just like my SLT daughter. I was extremely appalled and dragged her over to my husband, who gave me an exasperated look. He told me to let it die for just a bit and he would talk to H after the party. That was yesterday afternoon, and my husband just recently came home after meeting up with H and staying the night. He said I was overreacting, that H wasn't even talking about our daughter, that I shouldn't have acted the way I did all day, and that I was connecting dots that weren't supposed to be connected. I was upset and told him even if it wasn't our daughter he was talking about, he's still talking about a 16-year-old in an inappropriate way. We argued for a long time before eventually he left again, saying he was going to drive to blow off steam. Now I'm in the bathroom shaking and crying. How am I supposed to just sit back and allow this creep to creep near any of my children? I love my husband, and I think he's just been blinded by his loyalty to his friend. I don't want to get a divorce, especially because I live across the country from my family and I don't want to leave my husband. I love him, but he isn't taking me seriously in a serious situation. I keep thinking that even if he wasn't talking about my daughter, he was still talking about someone the age of my daughter. It's wrong in so many ways. I would have still acted this way if it was about someone else at the party. I keep thinking this is a nightmare and I'm going to wake up, but no, it's reality. I'm just overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. Please help me. Edit. Hey guys, AP here. Thanks to everyone who responded in the comments. I appreciate every single one of you, and I've read just about every comment. My heart goes out to those who have gone through something like this in the past. My husband still isn't back from his drive. I have a suspicion he might be out with H because I called H's girlfriend, we going to call her S now, to tell her everything. She told me he left that morning and hasn't been home either. Me or my son are going to swing by her apartment and she's going to stay over here for a few nights. I don't think she can stand to see H any more than I can. She's been angry at him ever since the text messages. I've told my eldest son. He acted the way my husband should have acted. He's angry and ready to hop in the car and find both H and my husband. I feel bad involving him, but I need him to know what happened so he can protect his siblings. I'm unsure how I'm going to approach the rest of the kids with this, but I am going to have separate talks with all of them about any inappropriate behavior H might have had. My eldest son told me that H never did anything to him. He noticed some behavior that was always strange, but he blamed it on just being weird. So, here are my plans. 1. H isn't going to be allowed near any of my kids ever. This is a fine line. If I decide to stay with my husband and he tries to cross it, then he will be the next one to go. By the way, my legal people, can I get a restraining order? Is that how that works? 2. I'm going to tell my husband he isn't allowed home or allowed to talk to my kids. This is until I tell all of my children what happened, have a talk with each of them separately, and me and him have a talk in a public space, unthinking, a cafe or park with a friend there to mediate. Anything he needs until then can be brought to him by his sister. 3. Me and S are going to go through my husband's stuff and whatever she can grab from her and H's apartment. We're looking for any CP or things that are suspicious. I'm also worried about this third man, the one on the phone. Maybe S knows them also, not immediately. The moment she gets here, we are going to wait until maybe tomorrow or even the next day. Edit 2. I didn't automatically assume my husband was into CP. It had been suggested by S over the phone after she read some of the comments on Reddit. She wanted to check H's stuff and said we should check my husband's too, just in case. Also, I don't know why my husband has been MIA for the past few nights. Maybe he's just waiting for me to calm down. I haven't sent the stay away message yet, which I might not. But whenever we talk, I'll be asking all these questions and more. My husband and I met in high school, and we have been friends ever since. I'm quite used to my husband not backing me up, telling me I'm exaggerating or setting me aside. This has been common in our relationship. I guess this has really opened my eyes to the past. I don't plan on divorcing him yet, even though I know I jumped the gun on it last night. If there is something that I find suspicious or that will make me reconsider this, it'll be thought about long and hard. I still love my husband. I know he loves all of our kids. I'm just waiting for him to admit it or to apologize about my kids. I will be talking to my daughter very soon, and all of y'all's advice has helped me so much on how to approach it. Update. Okay guys, I think I figured this out. A lot happened today, and I'm stressed typing this. So, for those who did not see my comment earlier, I'm not getting a divorce from my husband at this time. If anything sketchy or something I see crosses a line, that notion may change though. I did not immediately assume my husband was into CP. It's something I assumed H was into. While on a phone call with S, she said we should go through my husband's things too. I agreed. Me and my husband have an open phone policy anyway. I'll admit I've never checked his phone since our second was born, so it's not like I was pushing boundaries by saying this. So today I had a very long talk with my second eldest son and my daughter. I told them what happened, though I saved a few details like the text messages and simply said that H had been saying inappropriate things. I told them that whatever happens going forward, it's not their fault, nor is it my daughter's fault in any way. It's the pedophilic mind of someone we trusted. I asked them if he or anyone had done anything to any of them, and if they had, that I wouldn't be angry at them and would be proud they spoke up. My daughter said he would sometimes get too close and put his arm around her shoulders, but nothing ever made her alarm bells go off in her head. I reiterated to her that she was not to blame for what happened, and it's all on her. We hugged, and I held her as she cried for a bit. My second eldest son was quiet, which he often is, but he told me that he never really liked H and thought he was weird. I asked him again if anything happened, and he said no. We talked about more things to do with this type of stuff, and I think it ended well. My two youngest children simply know that H did bad stuff, and we won't be seeing him for a long time. Then around lunchtime, my husband came home. I never did go through with telling him to stay away, and he was basically sobbing at my feet outside our front door. He told me he was so confused and angry about what happened that he was convinced his best friend wasn't like that. He had been drinking last night after he left and fell into a bit of self-hatred. He wasn't with H though, but he had been texting with him that night. I asked him why he never stood up for me and my daughter, and why he stayed the night with H. He said I was making a scene at our daughter's birthday party and didn't want to ruin the day for her. And he stayed the night because it was too late anyway by the time he stopped talking with H. I hate this apology though. Maybe it's the comments echoing in my ears, but it felt fake and that he was minimizing my pain and maximizing his. I'm not sure. He went silent when he saw S at the house though. I told him that she was staying a few nights. I didn't give him much of an explanation. Later, when I started to make dinner, he came up behind me and hugged me. I pushed him back and told him that I didn't want to have any physical contact with him anytime soon. He got angry, telling me that it was over now that he apologized and promised to stand up for us in the future. I told him that he has to make up for what he did in the past first, and that he needs to talk with our daughter. He went to go sulk somewhere, and I haven't really seen much of him since. Hopefully that made enough sense as I'm rushing the last bit. A shout out to everyone who's been helping me. There's just a lot to do in a short time now that my husband is already back at home. Also, to the misogynists who keep telling me to take a step back and breathe, that my husband is being logical and I am being emotional. Scroll up 3 paragraphs to where he was blubbering on our doorstep. Second story entitled, Mill went nuclear to get full custody of their grandchildren and it backfired. Hello Reddit, TLDR. I'm looking for advice on how to build a relationship with my daughter-in-law and get over the rift she's been causing since giving birth. My son, David, has been married to my daughter-in-law, B, 24, since September of 2020. Due to the pandemic, I never really got to know her because they only dated for about a year before they got married, and I didn't know about her until they had dated for about 6 months. I love my son very much, but I feel like our relationship has been rocky since they got married. He has a daughter from a previous relationship who is 10, and since they got together, I haven't had the same relationship with her. I know this is partially because he moved out of my house very suddenly without really saying anything, I may add, and I no longer get her on his weekends. I try to get them to bring her to visit when they have her, but usually, I only see her once a month or so, and lately, it has felt like she has been more distant when she visits. I think this is because B says negative things about me around her, and I find that unfair. They just had a baby at the end of January. She was induced due to preeclampsia and in labor for 3 days before having a C-section. I had been in an accident a few weeks prior and don't have a vehicle, and my son refused to pick me up to be there for the labor at all or to see the baby in the hospital. But her parents got to see the baby and were in the parking lot the entire time. I called him while she was in labor a few times, but on the second day after her water broke, I called him and heard her snap at him to get off the phone, and he refused to accept any calls after that. I just wanted to know that the 3 of them were okay, though she was in the hospital 2 days after the C-section, and they wouldn't stop to visit me on their way home after the birth because she was hurting, even though she had painkillers she could have taken, and she didn't feel right according to my son. This is when I became concerned that she had PPD. My daughter ended up picking up her prescriptions and some groceries for them and got to see the baby that night. Her and B have a relationship that is apparently pretty good. I was supposed to visit a couple of days after they got home, but she ended up insisting something was wrong and went back to the doctor, who apparently sent her to the hospital. My son told me they diagnosed her with postpartum preeclampsia, but I was pretty certain that that was only something that happened during pregnancy and went away after birth, so I was pretty sure he was confused. The day after they admitted her again, 5 days after the baby was born, with everyone meeting her but me, was my birthday. I called her around 8 that morning to see what was really going on, but she didn't answer. A while later, my son called me, wished me a happy birthday, and asked why I had called B. I admit I snapped at him and said she should be returning my call because I called her. I hung up on him, and maybe 5 minutes later, she called me. I told her she should have called me and that I wanted to hear her voice and hear from her what was going on since my son gets confused. I then asked her if this was a mental or physical issue, and she went silent before saying physical. I asked if she was sure, and she got kind of snippy and said they had padding on her bed because she was a seizure risk and she couldn't be alone with her newborn, so she was pretty sure. I didn't comment on her tone because I was sure she was stressed. She was released the next day, and they came and visited me while I was at my daughter's watching her 2 kids on their way home so I could see the baby. I offered her some pillows to sit on. My son said she basically gave birth both ways, even though I knew this wasn't true, and wondered if she had some soreness that made him think this. And she refused my hospitality, saying she was fine and felt pretty good. 2 weeks later, my son picked me up and brought me to their home to visit. I stayed for a few hours, and she didn't really make any effort to talk to me. She was just quiet, and she sat on the couch. When my son took me home, I asked why she was so unhospitable, and he said I had been rude while she was in the hospital. She shouldn't have had to call me, and I shouldn't have asked if it was a mental or physical problem because he had already told me it was physical. He also said I shouldn't have posted anything on Facebook before she was born about the baby being born, and that I was rude when he called to make me take it down. She doesn't post on social media very often, so I didn't think it would be a big deal. He hasn't picked me up to see the baby because he says he needs to be there to help with the baby, and they won't bring the baby to me because he says the baby isn't allowed in my house. I told my son I'm planning to quit my job to babysit for them, but I haven't even gotten her return to work date, and she hasn't once thanked me for doing it. Overall, I feel like she's holding on to some very petty things and is using them to keep me away from my son and granddaughters. I want a relationship with her, but I am missing some critical bonding time with the baby, and I am going to struggle to forgive her for it, especially over petty nonsense. She won't even come up to talk to me. I'm really wanting to send a text and lay all my feelings out for her and just hash it out, but I understand there are probably cultural differences at play with all of this too, so I could use some advice on what to say. Relevant comments. This whole exchange comment, lady. If you don't pull your head out of your arse, you're not going to be part of the lives at all. You're not owed nearly any of what you seem to think you are. When it comes to their baby, they don't owe you crap. 1. Your son had 2 priorities when his wife was in labor. His wife and their baby, not you. He didn't have time to come pick you up or talk to you on the phone. Have you ever heard of a taxi cab? 2. She shouldn't have to take a pain pill just so they can stop by and see you on their way home. How incredibly selfish of you. They did the right thing and went straight home. 3. Are you seriously questioning a doctor's diagnosis? Do you really think it's appropriate to ask her if it's physical or mental? Are you mental? 4. You're lucky no one called you back at all. They are tired and are learning how to care for their newborn, and that is after your dill had a complicated labor and delivery and complications after birth. No one has the emotional bandwidth to deal with your entitlement. 5. You inconvenienced your son and had him pick you up and drive you home. Again, taxis, Uber, and Lyft were better options. Then you're complaining that his wife, who is exhausted and still healing, is inhospitable. I'm guessing she was saying plenty to you in her head but was too polite to actually verbalize it. 6. Do they even want you babysitting their baby? Did they actually ask this of you, or did you just decree that this is what is happening? 7. You do not post baby news on Facebook without the parents' permission. You were rude and overstepping. 8. If you want to send them a text, send them a sincere apology for being a pushy, entitled pain in the arse, and promise you'll behave better in the future. OP's response: I'm a grandparent and do deserve to be in my grandchildren's lives. I also deserve not to have my eldest granddaughter turn against me. Saying they owe me nothing is incorrect, and the courts would agree with that. I love them both, so I don't want it to come to that, but I am entitled to that. 1. If he had come the first night before she was in real labor, he wouldn't have needed to talk to me. We don't have taxi cabs, and the Uber would have been well within my budget. 2. She refused to take any of the painkillers once discharged. Period. That was selfish of her, and I had food for them too, so my son wouldn't have had to cook. It wasn't just for me to see the baby. 3. No, I was wondering if my son had the right information. He's relayed the wrong things before. 4. I understand that from her perspective after reading some of the comments. However, in my family, it's just common to call back regardless, especially after having a baby. I see it's a cultural difference. 5. I can't go to where they live, otherwise I would be there every day. If that was an option, I would have definitely jumped on it instead of having him pick me up. But Uber isn't in their tiny town. 6. I told my son after I heard B tell my daughter about her struggle to find reputable daycare without a year-long wait and how she was scared for the safety of her baby. They won't have to worry if I watch her. 7. My son just said not to post pictures. I didn't realize announcing I was a grandma again would be a big deal. I deleted it. 8. I told my son I was sorry for hurting her feelings when he told me. I've always apologized to him when he's told me I've done something wrong in her eyes, whether I think it was wrong or not. I don't want to hurt her feelings ever. I want her to know she doesn't have to run to my son. She can come to me, and I want a chance to explain myself to her. Wait, you told him you were quitting your job to babysit? I told my son I would after I heard B telling my daughter about her struggle to find reputable daycare without a year-long wait and how she was scared for the safety of her baby. They won't have to worry if I watch her. It wouldn't be for free, and I own my house outright, so I have no mortgage. I don't plan to live with them. I also had planned to watch my 2 daughters, but we are currently not on speaking terms, so I may get a part-time job for weekends to supplement my income a little bit, but either way, I will be okay. One last gem from OP. I agree she seems to have no respect for me being her mother-in-law. It's very disappointing. I'm astounded by all the people who don't feel that grandparents are needed in children's lives and that I'm simply owed nothing. Without me, that child would not be here, and I don't think she realizes it. I wish my son had handled a lot of this differently. It feels like people believe children can be used as pawns when you don't agree with the grandparents. Post in legal advice 2 weeks later, I'm seeking advice on getting grandparent rights in Indiana. My son has 2 daughters with 2 different women. The oldest is 10, and he and her mother were never married. No custody agreement. They just have an informal agreement. The youngest is almost 2 months old, and he and her mother are married. I was under the impression that any grandparent could petition for custody or visitation in the U.S., but the way I'm reading it, I can't unless my son is incarcerated or they aren't married. Is this correct? What do I need to do to seek joint custody of my granddaughters? What do I need to build a solid case? I've already tried resolving this without going this drastic, but his wife doesn't want to work with me. Commenters point out that she does not qualify for grandparents' rights in this scenario. She saw them at Christmas and they have able parents. I was under the impression that grandparents' rights were for when a parent kept a child from having a relationship with the grandparents. Visitation would be more than once every 3 months, or once a month, wouldn't it? I don't feel like there is much of a relationship left with any of them to torpedo. So, if I sacrifice a relationship with them to have a relationship with my granddaughters, that would be fine. People draw attention to her previous post and say that she's angry that her son moved out. I can't travel to them currently. If I could, I would be over there as often as I could. I have apologized, even though I don't think I was wrong. If she felt slighted by anything I said, I apologized for it. Really though, I don't think it should matter. You don't use kids as pawns. I can have a relationship with my granddaughters without her, or I should be able to. That's what I thought grandparents' rights were for, to make sure parents couldn't stop an essential relationship with grandparents without a damn good reason, like abuse, drug use, etc. Also, he didn't need my permission to move. I just didn't appreciate that he gave no indication he was leaving. I've apologized for everything she felt I did wrong against my better judgment. I don't feel like I should have to continue to beg. My son says she's not preventing me from seeing them and appreciates my apologies, but I still haven't seen my grandchildren. Update post 3 weeks from the OG post. Well, I apologized to my daughter-in-law for all the things my son listed since I had received feedback about it being my son's job to handle his family. I told him my apologies to pass along, and then I waited. However, I got no response from B, no thank you, no trying to bury the hatchet, nothing. So, last Friday I made an appointment with an attorney to discuss grandparents' rights, and had that appointment on Tuesday. The lawyer told me I had a good chance with my older granddaughter, but would likely get nowhere with the baby. I filled out paperwork to get the process started, but Tuesday night I was questioning if I was doing the right thing. I called one of my friends to discuss it and was seriously considering not moving forward with it after talking to her. Then yesterday I received this message from B, this is B. I just wanted to let you know that friend told us you're intending to go for grandparent rights and also shared everything you've had to say about me. Let me first say that I have not once kept either of the girls from you, and I certainly have not kept son from you. He is a grown man, and if he wanted to talk to you, he was free to. You have not asked to come over and visit since son picked you up. You cannot expect us to 1, read your mind, or 2, drop everything and come pick you up. We have a new baby and we have our own lives. I also have not said a word to you about what happened during delivery or postpartum because I have no energy to argue with you. Son said you apologized and I told him I appreciated it. Even though it was not a real apology, you apologized for what you did to hurt my feelings, not that my feelings were hurt. I don't have time for your drama. For the record though, what you said was absolutely disgusting. I almost died. It had nothing to do with my mental health. Since you have decided to go for grandparents' rights, we will have no direct contact with you. All contact will need to go through our lawyer. You have been removed from my Facebook. You are not permitted to post any pictures you have sent of my child on social media. And the older granddaughter's mom feels the same way regarding the older granddaughter. We intend to have something written up by us and sent to you by the end of the week regarding this and ceasing contact with us. I assume we will be served with your visitation paperwork this week as well. You will get no pictures or phone calls going forward. In fact, you will be blocked. I also hope you realize you will absolutely lose this case. Your house is not suitable to live in, and you would have to be able to pass a drug test. When you lose, we will not resume contact with you. You lost your chance at being a part of our kids' lives by deciding to go to the most nuclear option instead of just communicating with us. I tried to respond to her and tell her that I didn't want to go through with it anymore, and I reacted with a pit of anger, but she wouldn't answer texts or calls, so I assume I really am blocked. I called my son to tell him about the text she sent, and he said he knew about it and that it was a lot nicer than what he wanted to send me. So that's where I'm at this point. I'm going to show my lawyer the text so that it can show how unwilling to forgive and to work with me she is, and hopefully, it will resolve quickly so I can at least get visitation rights with my oldest granddaughter. Edit to add, I don't appreciate the nasty messages I have received or the barrage of nasty comments. I admit I made a mistake, but now this is my only option. It's clear that most of the responses from Reddit are from young people, not from my generation, as I've gotten different responses in other online support groups from people my own age who are also grandparents, many from my own culture. Relevant comments, the drug test, she says that I would have to pass a drug test. I use medical marijuana to help with a chronic illness, but it is still illegal where I live. I am quitting entirely since this is a possibility. Getting in trouble. People point out that her daughter has cut her off as well. My daughter and I generally make up within a few months. I'm not really worried. She's also more capable of being a mother to her children than my son's wife and other mothers are to their daughters. With my son, why is your daughter a better mother? Because they need to have better cultural examples. For instance, the oldest mother is also not from our culture or race, and her hair is very different from that of her daughters. She has no idea how to take care of her hair. It's always a mess. My daughter-in-law has taken some initiative in doing and styling her hair, but she's still not great at it. The girls need someone who can teach them how to handle basic things like taking care of their skin and hair. The oldest's hair has been something I have encouraged them to let me handle long before my daughter-in-law came into the picture. Not taking care of a child's hair is a form of neglect. My daughter knows how to do those things because her hair and skin are much closer to theirs, and she can handle it with her own children. One last gem: no taxis, no buses. Their town is around 3,000 people. It's around 30 minutes by car, so I can't walk or bike there. I don't feel I deserve to be treated better than everyone else. We're both equally important in my son's life. She is obviously more important in her daughter's life right now, but without me, that baby wouldn't be here. I would drop the grandparents' rights case if I wasn't cut off. I reacted out of anger and desperation, but now it's the only option since I'm cut off. OP has since deleted her account. Edit: a few people pointed out there is a post that seems like it is from the daughter's perspective on R.Justamel, but the op of that post has requested it not be reshared. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.